Stomach grumbles.
Oh, that just hit the live feed. There we go.
Welcome.
Welcome to a Monday. I'm the Real and Raw Show. I'm Lynn Serrano.
And I'm Brian.
Yeah, and we'll be right back after this. Listen, I have no idea what this topic is, but you know what? We're talking about stinking thinking, so I'm just going to pass this to Brian. But hello, everybody.
Before we begin, Lynn and I always play a game. For those of you that are unaware, we play this game about how close we can say a bunch of things that might be inappropriate before we go live. We play that game on a regular basis.
But it's not even a game. It's what we're doing is we're actually having a regular conversation, and the conversation just ends up being a little weird or strange as we're waiting for the feed to go live. So we never know what is going to pick up at that time. So
I learned about Lynn's pre-show etiquette, and I learned about what sounds we might hear throughout the show. So.
Yeah, okay. So
let's just say it's a day for both of us, okay?
We're just gonna leave it and it has nothing to do that this happens to fall on a Monday. Monday gets a bad rap.
Wow.
And just so happens to fall that way.
Well, I suppose if you have an exorbitant amount of stress or crisis, and you get to the bottom depths of what that is, well, the only way to go is up. So.
Yeah. I'm I don't know if our volume is high enough yet or quality control I'm doing here, but I'm just muffled. Oh, that is loud. Okay. It's a Monday. Oh, that's all I'm gonna say.
You've done how many thousands of these, and they just happen to be not loud enough.
I knew something wasn't right, but whatever. Anyhow, don't mind me.
So the premise of the show, because we spent the past couple of weeks without a topic and just catching up and whatnot, but our roots are meant in having something that we can rant on for a few minutes about. And I think one of the things I always go back to, if I'm not feeling well, or if I'm feeling my anxiety is ultimately high, or whatever the case may be, is a lack of thinking time, right? For any high achiever, we're always giving so much into other people and doing things for others that those basic things that we need to have for our own selves in a selfish way are lacking a lot of times. And it's like everybody's gauge is a little bit different based on if you're a night owl or a morning person. But I think one of the non-negotiables, if you're on par with yourself, meaning like you're doing what you need to do, you're grounded, and you have a solid foundation, is thinking time, right? And I just, I'm not I wish I could do it every day, but I can't. But I look more at the macro, right? I look more at the whole week. And I love to just, in the morning, early in the morning, if I can do it, get up, have a cup of coffee, and just let my brain go with ideas and thoughts and become grounded. And it's not an enormous amount of time, but everybody's different. I just think preserving that time unapologetically for yourself is the main foundation here. And we have nobody to blame besides ourselves. We can always carve out some time for ourselves. Otherwise we'll find ourselves depleted, and we wonder why. Is because we're giving so much into others without replenishing our own supply.
Yeah, I'm just finding lately I'm disrupting mine, as you found out before the show. And so, but sometimes you got to shift, and sometimes things do get scrambled up, and then you have to find either a different footing, or you have to reshuffle, because you do see that it is a priority. You find that there's not a balance, and when there isn't a balance, and you're off kilter, you find that you definitely need that grounding even more. So. At least for me.
And I look at thinking time like my daily, weekly, monthly idea generation playbook, right?
Yeah.
Is that it's a safe haven for you to put whatever, no matter how radical the ideas are. There's no judgments in this space. That's why it's a very non-negotiable, part of my time when I can do it. And I know I can always get better at it. But when I'm able to think clearly, and go away from any judgments or thoughts or that won't work, it's it's a safe place to be, but it's also the most therapeutic because you're not putting limits on what you can create or what you can do in your life. And I think that anybody that is a high achiever and wants to reach their truest potential of personal excellence, that this is something that you do, and we don't do it enough, right? Uh, Case in point, like when those ideas come and we don't have a notebook or we don't have something to write it down, we're kicking ourselves for those types of, for that opportunity. And who knows what that could generate. And so creativity, I mean, there was a conversation I was a part of last week in terms of creativity for a mastermind. And I said, creativity is a science and an art. But you have to hone it. It's something that you can learn, but you got to do the work. And so thinking time is something where, to me, because I'm a big thinker, a deep thinker, that it's something that I cherish because that's where my ideas come from. That's where I get back to the core of myself in terms of my self-belief, my value, and what I can do for people. And if I'm on the right track, plus it also allows me to be in touch with my heart, which can waver if you're making your world about other people all the time.
Well, and the fun thing about thinking about things is that you realize that if you give the chance to think, then it's not weighing you down.
Right.
Because
Yep.
when you got all those thoughts of thinking about everything and you don't place it somewhere or give it a chance to think, it can fester in ways that you don't want it to. And it can hinder you in ways you don't want it to. So,
Right.
I mean, if you give it time, to simmer or, and like you said, I mean, some of us are old school and we do like paper to see it see it
Yep.
there or whatever. I mean, even if you start your day with the thoughts or jot it down before you go to bed, but put it somewhere, even daily. Don't let it pile up weekly or monthly or, yearly.
Right.
It really is a good thing to do the dumping of those thoughts and
Right.
and thinking of those things because they do help you in the long run to see where you're at. And I mean, people forget that that's why it was encouraged when you were younger to have diaries.
Yep.
It's a really healthy thing to have your thoughts down or written or on a laptop or a ledger or whatever, because you can see, I mean, just like bodybuilders, I mean, we used to put down how many reps we have because you want to see where you are from one year to another. And I mean, just any kind of goals, like I say, if you don't have the data in front of you, you don't know where you're at, you don't know your starting points, you don't know where, any point of reference or anything. So, I mean, documentation beats, it's just a look at it as a documentation, look at it as any way you look at it, as a diary, a journal. I mean, whatever words you have to use to justify it, but it, I mean, because some people say, I don't want to do a diary, or I don't want to document this. But I mean, it's like any recipe, if you want to perfect what you're doing or what you're not doing that's right, the only way you can do it is if you know what you put in that recipe or whatever you're doing or the ingredients or whatever. So when you give time to think and you realize, what, my schedule, I did thinking at, 5 o'clock, 3 o'clock or whatever. If you document the time and the date, you realize what wasn't working for you and
Right.
what was working for you. So the graphics and the data to see what flowed and what didn't, or to even look at your schedule. If we didn't even keep track of our schedule, how do we know where we performed or what flowed? I mean, you gotta, it's a tracking system. You can't see anything without that,
Well, and at a minimum, the way that you look at everything will change over time.
Right.
Like, like they always say, tomorrow's day starts the night before, right?
Right.
So if you're looking at it from a calm and collective manner, but your brain is firing, there is no rush. You're only taking this time to think about yourself. And yeah, it is a selfish way, but it's a selfish way that you deserve because it's for something else usually, right? You're doing it for yourself, but you're looking for some kind of deliverable, right? Whether that be an idea, a post, some way to help somebody, or some way to contribute and make a difference for others. You know what I mean? very few ideas are meant for just for me to hold on to myself without getting it out to some kind of audience, right? And it doesn't matter if you're selling anything or whatever. It's just to be a contribution in the world. And if you deprive yourself of that, then your self-expression is really being muted. And you know, and it's like that's when all the judgments and the self-assessment and what is everybody going to think and all of this is going to come to a head, just like being on the show, right? Some people might not like our voices. They like how upfront and honest we are. Well, okay, but you get over that with you go through that with time, that we might not be the right audience for somebody.
Right.
But also, though, we have to be who we are, and we are very straight to the point, real, authentic, and we want to be simple. I mean, we make life complex, but life in its own is simple. But we just have a knack for not keeping it that way. And so, any which way that you can look at life differently, your day to day, take an advanced screenshot of what tomorrow's going to be like, and just to allow yourself. And here's the thing: a lot of people will go to the amount of time it takes and blah blah blah. I'm like, if you're already telling me you don't have time, number one, that's false. Number two, you're already coming at it from a pessimistic point of view.
Right.
We all have the time. We're not, and obviously we bring in the conversation of being busy versus being productive, and people are going to validate that, whatever way they want.
Remember, they're always going to be right? So if they say they don't have the time, they're right. You can't convince anybody different than what they already know.
Well, and it's no different than the doctor's analogy about, how long does it hurt before you're actually going to go in and get some treatment? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, well, this is for you, but if you don't make it a priority, I know internally that when I allow myself to just have that time and to write down, it doesn't matter if I write a lot or a little, it's just that time for me to be grounded in what's ahead, for me to have that time selfishly to have a cup of coffee without having to be doing 20 other things for other people, and that experience shows up for me when those moments are needed. When I'm stressed, I got to keep going, and I can't take the time for myself,
What's really cool is I just had one of those little thoughts of, when you're having that coffee time, you're really having that personal time with yourself outside of yourself, really. Because if you're writing those little conversations down and you're reading it, you're like, hey, I'm having that one-on-one self, outside yourself. Oh, and there's Mary Kay. I love you, Mary Kay.
Hey.
And, and I'm just glad she chimed in right now, because it's funny that she did, because I was going to say, other than doing the show and Tuesday show with As We All See It, and everybody pops in there, and doing the show with Cheryl, I have really, since I got sick in December, I have really not posted, a lot social media wise, because I'm going through some stuff, and I'm just redoing stuff and working some stuff behind the scenes. And, and Mary Kay was kind of doing that too, is taking a little hiatus and all that stuff. But, you just need to do that sometimes. You just need to, you don't always need to be feeding, social media all the time. You need to take that time for you and come down, Yep, you have. Yep. Recalibrating it. Absolutely. And so, and that's what you need to do, and when you're ready to share and when you're ready to evolve and stuff, you're better for it when you come out, and, and you're prepared. So, I think that's the most, easiest way to be vulnerable is to be prepared to be vulnerable for yourself and share it with the world, in that way.
Well, and I think too many people don't want to break down the walls of themselves, where they do have to confront themselves. They do have to confront that they don't have ginger colored hair, despite what some people might say. Or, and I think that through the course of time, you have your voice. You're not allowing it not to be heard.
Right.
Good, bad, or other. But it's like, I think you also get the confidence and vulnerability that I'm going to show up as myself. If you like it, that's okay. But then you might not be absolutely better known.
Thank you.
Is that you just show up as yourself, you do your thing, and you're always going to have your audiences. Some people you will, some people you won't. But it's not like you're trying to cater to everybody, which I think is a major. And then another thing to parallel what you said is taking the time to recalibrate And I think it parallels at a wedding where somebody's a master of ceremonies or announcer or what have you, is that they feel like they have to say something, but if they don't really have anything poignant or compelling to say, don't open up the microphone, right? If it
Yeah.
doesn't, if it doesn't direct, guide, and lead everybody to what's next, if it's not important, don't turn on the microphone. And I think
Yeah.
that a lot of content creation and shows also match up with that too. It's like, because I want you to value what I have to say, but I also want you to value me as a person that has, as Jeff Bajorek says, something worth talking about with somebody worth talking to, you know? And so if we don't have anything to share, even if it's, just an open session, we still want it to be valuable for you, but at least
Right.
we're going to come loaded with some stories or some kind of narrative that we
Right.
hope you get something out of, instead of like spending the first couple minutes like, hey, so how you doing? How's the weather in Montana? Blah, blah, blah. And it's just, there's nothing there of substance that would make it worth your time.
Yeah, just the look at me, I'm here,
Right.
kind of thing. And yeah, that's, I mean, because believe it or not, that could still be salesy, and that could still be annoying, and that could still be something of nobody cares or wants to hear kind of thing.
Right. Well, and I
So
mean, you want to upset somebody really quickly, just have something be camouflage behind some kind of sales offer.
yeah, yeah,
Like you lose, in my opinion, you lose all credibility versus, this is one of the few times where we're not asking you for anything, right?
yeah,
And I think that our world has trained us to be programmed. Sharing value is a priority. It is.
yeah,
And we can go down a rabbit hole with value. But one of the things that to me is not semantically the same is add value versus give value, right?
right,
Add value still implies to me, and I might be a little bit outdated, that in a business context, if you do business with me, then I will give you value. After there's an exchange of dollars, now I'm going to give you the special sauce. That's a bunch
yeah,
of garbage these days.
yeah.
You
No,
know, you there
that's somebody that's feeding the breadcrumb trail to their thing,
correct.
and saying, here, I'm only giving you a little piece, and but you gotta pay for the rest.
Yeah.
And
I I
no,
mean, giving value, obviously we can do our best to put it out there,
right,
but whoever we're trying to attract or whoever it's for, they have to perceive it that way. And I think number one, that's a missing piece. Number
right,
two, there might be some times where whatever you put out there might not be perceived as value, but over time, by doing it over and over and over again, it's something you're driven by, and it would almost, in my opinion, make it impossible for somebody not to get something, whether they share
right,
it or not.
right. The sincerity in the relationship, and coming from a place of not knowing it all or not whatever, but knowing that it's a give and take relationship too.
Yep.
It's really important, and the genuine, being genuine, and
And I
it's
think,
hard to find that.
too, is that to do it hundreds of times, without asking for anything, and doing it with the discipline and the agenda and all the time, to show up over and over and over again, you're going to get some skills. You're going to
Oh,
learn some things, but also though, it's a legacy.
absolutely.
And I think somebody might not like our show, but for instance, but they can't argue that we didn't put in the work, we didn't do that, we didn't have the commitment, and we didn't have the drive to
Absolutely.
show up every day, to show up every week, you know
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, and look at that, just like that's 20 minutes. And Mary Kay, I'm so glad to see you. We need to have you come and visit us here really soon and
Gonna
be
have you
with us.
back.
Yes, glad to have you back. So any final words before we leave,
I'm
sir?
going to leave it up to you because I came up with the topic. So, like, thinking time, what was there for you versus what's there now mentally for thinking time, or what you're gathering from our conversation.
Well, I think you reminded me that it is kind of special to take that time to have yourself, when you're writing. I don't know why, it just, there's a lot of reasons and a lot of times that I've stopped. Oh, we love you too, Mary
Yeah.
Kay. There's a lot of reasons and a lot of times I've stopped myself from writing, as often as I used to. And yet, because I used to do some flow writing where I just literally allow whatever, and it'd be amazing writing because I'd be like, wow, I wrote that, or and I'd be literally impressed and the thoughts, but I forget that those are messages for me, that I'm actually having an outside experience with myself. And actually, like, I have books of things I've reread that I wrote, and I'm like, wow. And yet I you just reminded me that I should revisit that.
Yep.
And it's just really because I'm very articulate when I write. I'm just like really in depth. And that's the introvert in me that can write. I can be more expressive when I write than when I speak. And I'm like, damn, that's deep. And I mean, I've been told I'm very deep, when I write, since fourth grade, when my teachers are like, wow, that's really deep. So, but so you just reminded me that that's pretty special to just take that time and do that, because that's something that you're giving a gift of time to yourself.
Yep.
And that's something that I've avoided for a little while, that I know I should spend more time doing. So that's
the one thing I'll challenge everybody that's watching this is to take a notebook, find something special. Maybe it's got some colors on it, or whatever. Maybe it's metallic, whatever. But make it your idea journal, right? Make it your idea notebook, right?
nice. Yeah.
The reason why I say that is because we all have ideas, and it should be a coveted place where you go to, to be creative. And anybody that's not creative, that's a bunch of BS, number one. Number two, you can learn it, right? But it's one of the most coveted things, because it's like, these are my ideas. Now, regardless if the ideas go out in the world, it doesn't matter, but they're documented. I can reflect back on them, because to somebody that's a deep thinker, and somebody that, I don't want to speak for you, Lynn, but if there's an idea I want to roll with, but I forget what it was, or I never wrote it down, I'm pretty upset at myself, because who knows what it could generate? Who knows what I could create? Who knows what can enhance my thinking?
Well, you brought me another idea that I'm going to have to work on, and I'm going to have to get it out in the next month. So I'll tell you behind the scenes, but it'll be for our audience.
And also, though, one last thing to leave everybody is that when you're in this space of thinking, there's no fight or flight. So you're using an opposite part of your brain than the one that would just be to try to live through this moment, right? That's why you're able to access that part of your brain versus the other one, because you're not trying to just survive the moment, because you can't be in both hemispheres of the brain at the same time. It doesn't work.
That's
you're
right.
either creative or you're trying to survive. And when you're giving yourself thinking time, you're in the creative part of your brain. That's why ideas come to you. That's why you have no judgments on what you're writing down, is because you're just in a space of abundance and thought. And whatever comes to you, just write down without, oh, that doesn't make any sense, or, I'm never going to be able to do that. That's the other part of your brain.
Yeah, it is wild when you allow yourself to write. You've done it then many times, right?
I have.
I mean, it's really cool, because you're like, what?
Well, and another thing to prove that is that sometimes when you're just having a hard time to try to think of anything, is because you're thinking your way out of it in an opposite side of your brain, versus when you're in a creative space, you can knock something out pretty quickly and it sounds great. You're not using any extra words. You're not adding fluff. You're just getting right to the point, because the objective is get the article done, be as concise as possible. And here's what I want the article to be about. And it either matches that or it doesn't.
My senior year of school, there'd be a couple times, because I was very, very active in things, and in literature class, I'd be like, I read the stuff, but I was like, I forgot the questions or something. And 2 times I asked my one best friend, I was like, let me see your paper, because I forgot what the questions were. I looked at his paper. I just looked at his paper. I was like, okay, thanks. So I literally just free float wrote my paper the class before. We had a free period. I wrote my paper, handed it in, and then we got our grades back the week later. And I'm like, so I was like, oh, and he's like, what grade did you get? He's like, I got an 80. I was like, oh, okay. He's like, what'd you get? I'm like, I got an A plus 15 bonus. And He's like, but you looked at my paper. I said, but I didn't cheat your paper. I didn't rewrite your. He goes, it's obvious, but how did you get a better grade? I'm like, she just liked the way I wrote it. So yeah, just because it was real creative. I mean, I got the gist of what he did, and I just explained it way better than he did. So just being.
This is a timeless life skill that'll serve everybody, because for as long as we're as long as we're alive and breathing, there's always access. There's always something that we can do, because if our foundation, like I love the metaphor of like a house as a foundation, because we can't put the top on it of our life if we have a murky, floorboards, and if the concrete is watered down or it's not built properly.
Right. Or even if you have a deck of cards and you're building a house thing, you got to still get those things squared and bent. And, I mean, you got to have that bottom part set up, or the rest is going to fall.
And I think it's also implied too, is that you're doing it for yourself. You're doing it for nurturing your mind and your mental health, but also though you're putting yourself first for the limited time that you do this, whether it's every day, every week, or whatever works for you. But there's so much in here that we don't get out. And even if we get out, it doesn't mean we take action on it in the form of ideas or thoughts, right?
Right.
And obviously, as I think it was, who was it, Dale Carnegie or Earl Nightingale, or one of them, is that thoughts are things, right? Yep. But it's like, okay, they can only materialize into something of substance if you do something with it in the form of action.
Yep.
So yeah, there's a lot there.
All right, we gotta go.
Yes.
All right. Love you, Brian.
Love you too. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.